have, I don't know, about 100 on buckets and then 200 on vacuums.
It's not totally cheating.
I'd like them
It's
all
not
to be on
cheating.
vacuums.
The yield is gonna be
Got a
50% more, right?
Yeah. In Lettery, up towards Richardson Lake, he had 12,000 taps, 2.5-inch line, it had stainless tanks. That thing would surge and just blow like 20 gallons of sap in every time it surged. His boiler, he bought out of Canada. He built the building like the length of this room for the boiler. He said it burned 16 gallons of diesel an hour.
So he had a steam burner.
Yeah.
Yeah, those steam burners are
He
amazing.
goes, once that thing's running, he goes, there's a gallon of syrup coming out every 10 minutes.
Well, yeah,
That's wild.
200 gallons.
He said it was a lot more fun when he did it in his garage.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Job now.
Okay,
It's like a long thing. Once it becomes your job,
Yeah,
you know,
it's not fun
way less fun.
welcome to this regular meeting of the Readfield Select Board. It is Monday, March 10th. I'll call the meeting to order at 6 o'clock. You would join me for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We do have a short agenda tonight, and we'll go through as quickly as possible, but doing our due diligence. The first item on the agenda is 25076, regular meeting minutes. Does anyone have a motion?
Make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
We have a
I would
motion and
amend
a-
it to the couple typos that we fixed.
Yes. Were they fixed and put in the packet?
They're not in the packet.
Packet was the
The
original.
corrections are not.
Right.
Okay, so, do you want to make that with the amendments?
With the amendments
With the
of the
corrections.
English grammar professors on the board have added.
That was both of us. I said,
Both of us.
I said professors.
I know, I heard. Does your second apply to that, Dave?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Hey, we're gonna do this right.
Oh, man. Are we?
Seeing none, all those in favor? It is unanimous. The next item is 25077, the warrants 35 to 36. And is that you, Steve?
It is. So, it's the
Got
little
new
guy.
ones up here too, so.
Yeah, the ones for next time, right?
They're for
Yes,
next
signed.
time. Yes,
Those are
but
for
we
you.
have all signed those, so now they're over there for you.
Well, fantastic,
you
thank
got
you.
Okay, so this is 35 and 36, and it's a baby one, relatively speaking. Payroll was 24,922, and vendors were 43,905 for $68,827.44. All pretty straightforward stuff. We see a bunch of times. The bigger ones, Archie's, Holloway stuff for 5738, and two things for assessing. David Ledoux, $2,000. That's his normal thing, right? And then $2,500 for the reval to Jericho assessing. And then Maine Municipal Employee Health was 8,417, and New England Salt, 13,314. I really want to own a salt company, just in my spare time. Oh, and then there's 3,925 for legacy woodlot services, and that's the invasive plant work in the town forest that we get reimbursed for. We paid it out there, but we get reimbursed for that. So.
So they've
Okay.
already done that work, Eric.
Yes.
Okay.
That was done, it was done last summer. They didn't invoice us until, or last summer, fall. They didn't invoice us until now, so.
I was wondering if they were out there in their snowshoes doing that. So.
That would-
No, it was just a delay in getting us the bill, which, I don't
Okay.
mind so much.
I'll make a motion to approve the warrants as presented to the sum of $68,827.44.
Next time.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? It is unanimous.
A little louder.
Yes, I was scolding Sean for being too quiet for the recording, and I got the look. She got the look. Okay, we're moving on to select board communications. Does anyone have anything? We'll move on to the town manager and treasurer's reports.
All right, I'll zip through these. I'll start with administration and finance and the town manager's report. Budget work has been a big part of my life the last month. And especially the last week or two has been really heavy. But we're getting to that time of year where we're getting close to the fine tuning of it. Not fin as it says in my report, but fine with an E. That was right, the first line, Jared,
Fin-tuning.
right in the first line. But anyway, that's been a big part of the work over the past month. Technology upgrades also ongoing. My report on the 24th covered those pretty well, but we're just continuing on with that effort. We've had at least one and sometimes more GA applications every week over the past month. So that has picked up, but we've been able to offer assistance to most folks that need it. The town was able to avoid making any property foreclosures, so this has been reported before, but I'm really pleased that we were able to work with people and avoid that situation. And then I wanted to announce publicly that Chris Cassiani is retiring. This Friday will actually be his last day. Some of you may have seen the advertising notices, but we're also hiring for his position and a few others, and that includes summer beach and maintenance staff, an AV assistant for Bill. He's great to work with. It's a fun job. And it's a good stipend too. And then cemetery sexton as well. And we can talk more about why that is a little bit different later. Maintenance and transfer station, several storms over the past month have really kind of run the gamut as far as winter activity goes. We had the nice dry powdery stuff, and then the last one was wet, sloppy, and then we had the windstorm. So we've kind of run through the course, and we're probably gonna have a few more by the time it's done, but that has been you know, a good run for the end of the winter. Hopefully that's it. I'll knock on wood, whatever. But we are getting close to the end of the materials budget. We do have reserves for those type of things, but we're just getting close because we had to use a lot of material this winter. We had several downed trees on the last storm. That was last week, Friday, I believe. And I just want to thank Lee and the fire department for getting out there and clearing that stuff where they could, where they were called out. So that was really helpful. CMP and Lucas Tree, of course, do their bit as well. The roads are posted. So that means no heavy or overweight vehicles. I believe it's 23,000 pounds. If you're not sure, definitely ask. But what we need to be doing is ensuring that nothing that weighs more than that goes on the roads without either permission for a special reason, or which can be granted, or for at times when the roads are solidly frozen, mostly in the morning. But with what we're spending on road work, I do not want to see our roads get tacoed in the spring. I mean, there's inevitable wear, but one overloaded truck, one excavator moving at the wrong time can wreck a road. So it's very, very important that we all are aware of that, and call me if anybody shows up or if you see anybody on the roads, so we can deal with it. We warn people, we tell them, hey, you know, this is not right. We're not going to go right to a fine or anything, but depending on how egregious it is, I guess, but it's a big deal. We did meet with engineers to kind of catch up to date on the Church Road sidewalk. The first phase is wrapped up essentially, and now we're moving on to the right-of-way process, which basically means that's when we talk to the landowners. If we have to negotiate any temporary easements to access areas for work, that'll be happening next. And that takes 12 to 18 months, so that'll be happening pretty quickly to get that going. That's, I
12
guess,
to 18 months is quickly?
I guess I'll say that's DOT's speed. We can probably do a little bit better than that. I'm hoping 6 to 12, but you know, we'll see.
Okay.
But DOT was optimistic that we might be able to do a little bit better than their time. And we received preliminary estimates for the salt sand shed, and I'm not even sure honestly what to do with these at this point. 1.1 to 1.25 million. I don't know how realistic that is, and I say that with a bit of caution because I've been wrong before on project costs. We did get the estimate after the tariffs went into effect, and that has hit concrete pretty hard. So I'm sure that's part of it, but we'll talk more about it during the budget discussions, but it's not a good feeling.
Still a shed, right?
A
Shed.
60 by 120 foot building. So, I mean,
Shed.
it's,
not
is that-
yeah, oh, I know.
There's
Don't-
no
Is that
plumbing,
just steel?
no floors.
Steel building?
That's the 1.25 was with timber. The 1 million was with fabric, with the steel, with the hoop. So I'm guessing that steel would be even
The
more.
wrong business.
We're all in the
apparently,
wrong
yeah.
business.
But I think that we'll talk about it more, but my thought on this is that we probably ought to just put it out to bid and find out what it's actually gonna cost. But that's later on, and I'm still trying to digest that number.
Yeah.
Cause I just,
Sounds a little
I
excessive.
just don't believe it. But again, I thought that the fire station was gonna be 500,000. It turned out to be 8, so.
Yeah, but that has plumbing. and
Oh, I know,
electrical,
I know.
Sheet rock and insulation.
Yeah.
And fire suppression.
Supposedly, yeah. But no, I hear you guys.
I'll dig on that one a little bit too, because I know some guys that have built big steel buildings.
Yeah.
I don't know, the engineer side of that, how that comes in. But I think that's all part of the deal when you buy them.
It can be, but we're talking about foot thick, 10-foot tall concrete walls.
Mhm.
So there's a bit of work that goes into the footings for those and the porous.
10-foot concrete walls?
So in order to get the same amount of material that's in our giant dome right now, because we're making it square, which is what most people do these days, 60 by 120 gets us about 2,400, 2,500 cubic yards, which is just about what we have in that right now, or not right now, but what we can put in the round one. So you lose some efficiency when you go to a square, but then again, the physical structure is a lot more traditional. But anyway, Dave, if you have any thoughts,
Yeah.
if you could talk to some people, I still think it's crazy. I still think that, $500,000 is probably on the high end, but the prices are just going berserk and people are not certain what's gonna happen, so.
Tell you what, we'll all go together. We'll put it up. We'll charge you like 600,000.
It sounds like a plan.
We'll all get a
My
great
plan
deal
was
out of
just-
it.
Just building it like the old days,
I was just saying, like, just a
That doesn't
barn-
work anymore.
Just a barn raise.
That's
Right.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, but no, when you got a 60-foot span the short way, it takes some doing, so. But anyway, that's
Cranes.
I just wanted to put that there publicly and say how disappointed I am with it, but we'll have to work on it.
We're gonna talk about it a little more in a minute, right?
Yes, we will.
Okay.
And so then, final note on transfer station is that it's peripheral, I guess, but the RSU is moving forward with a trial composting program at the elementary school. I met with Jay Charette, and he seems to be on board. And if we can help with that, I want to. That's really all I wanted to say on this point, is that it can save them money. It's a good
Which
way.
saves us money.
Saves us money. And so it's a
Quarter
good
of the
thing.
money.
But, moving on to community services, Readfield U is happening. There's a ton of stuff going on. Sean can pitch his business. I'm not gonna do it for him. But we have lots of other community activities as well going on with Readfield U. And I encourage residents to try something out. It's not just education, it's community building. And I've had a lot of discussions the last couple of weeks with people who say, where's everybody in town? We have all the same people doing the same things, and we want to get people out. So I'll just encourage again people to try to do those events and meet new people, come out to the community. The Low Power FM radio group has conducted a few site visits, and we did receive our call sign. So we will be WRCP LP, which stands for low power. And it doesn't really mean anything. We thought maybe Readfield Community Programming for the acronym, but in all honesty, it was one of about 5 call signs that wasn't already taken by somebody else. So they did have WDYR, which I thought about for a split second, but I thought that might be much. But anyway, the frequency is 94.5, and if anybody has an interest in helping out or running a show, we are going to be doing the emergency programming and emergency response piece, but backfilling, we're going to have community programming. So,
And is this gonna take place sooner than the first estimated 2-year?
yeah, so we should be able, I think if things go well, have a soft open sometime in the next 3 to 4 months, and maybe have a formal launch around Heritage Days.
Cool.
So
Have you seen any of the designs for the logo yet?
I have, yeah.
So good.
They're looking at a loon with a little transmitter. Yeah, it's kind of cool. Yeah, but I think it's exciting that people are interested and engaged in this, right? Because I mean, logos and all that stuff. I look at it, I'm like, it's a logo, it's cool. But people are excited about it, and that's, I think, really important to get people engaged. And I think this will be also a good opportunity for people to get together in the community and talk about things.
Honestly.
And then final swim lessons, it's looking likely. Jen, oh yeah, there you go, yeah.
Bill, can
Um,
you zoom in on Sean's laptop?
Not Sean,
Not showing.
just the laptop.
Okay.
Anyway, we can go back to it, or I'll put it on the
It's just
website, but, in any event,
It's cool.
swim lessons are looking like they're gonna happen. And that's also another exciting thing, for the
It's
community.
been like a decade.
No,
Uh,
it's not.
It's been a long time since we had a
been a
full
few
program.
years, yeah.
We had a trial run during COVID, and that was okay, but,
2 years in a row?
I think it was just 1 year.
What is in a row?
It was 1 year in a row. All right, so, treasure, any questions on the town manager's report? I do want to get through this.
Sounds good.
All right, so treasurer's report. This one's really easy. Things are actually looking very normal. We have the check reconciliation completed to the end of February. Our accounts are in balance. We did roll over one CDR, or we will be. I've already signed the document for it, but 4.3%, which is about at least a quarter point, if not more, higher than I thought we were going to be at this time. So bonds and CDs and things like that are still really good investments right now because the basic Fed rate is still fairly high. And that's probably going to stay there for 6 months to a year. And that's actually helping us out with the budget later. I'll talk about that. But anyway, we rolled that forward. So that's continuing. And then we spent a lot of time on the budget in February and March. There are a number of important things that have happened, and I'll talk about those later in the meeting, but our budget committee meeting is scheduled for March 19th. It was originally last Wednesday, but we had conflicts and people were sick with COVID and whatever else. And so we had to reschedule that. But budget committee will be meeting on the 19th for anybody that has an interest. We're getting to crunch time, decision time. So if you wanted to pick a time to get involved, this is a good time to do it. Basically, the month of February looks good. Transfer station fees are down a little bit, but other things are up. Real estate is up in part because the taxes are up, but that's in part because of multiple things, school, town, and county. The expenses are very much in line for the year. I think we're in a good spot. The one thing I do worry about is winter road materials and possibly winter repair work, depending on how things shape up this spring. But we've done okay. It was a hard winter. So
Was there any other road damage other than North Road?
we had North Road, Church Road, Loose Road, and Plains Road. These went across the town. It wasn't all in sequence, but it was kind of every road on that north side of town had something down at one point. Not all bad, but at least definitely some work there. Something else I wanted to mention about that, but any event. Oh, we did have some from that rainstorm. We had some pretty bad washouts on a couple of stretches. It's just really hard when you get the snow melts down and it just freezes rock solid in the culverts. And we have to talk with. Oh, go ahead, Dave.
Nowhere for it to go. It's gotta
Nowhere
go right
for it.
down the road.
Yeah, exactly.
Great.
But I do want to talk to the road committee and the select board over the next several months about trying to work with people to get their snow out of the right of way. Because every problem we had was the result of snow that wasn't pushed back far enough. They got it just off the pavement and dropped it right on top of the culvert. And it just froze up solid and we couldn't do anything about it. Or we could, but it took a lot of effort. So anyway, I want to talk about that and if there's any way to maybe, I don't want to say legislate, but encourage people to push it back further. And that's something we can work on. I don't know, probably just asking people when we see it starting to pile up, but it wasn't a bad enough winter that had to be that way. So anyway, that's my treasurer's report.
Once it piles up, it's harder to move, so better to get them to move it at the beginning and all year. Any questions? Okay, great job. Thank you very much. We don't have anything for boards and committees. Public communications, there's no one present in the room. We have 2 folks online. Do either of you wish to contribute anything? I know it's not public time, but I'll just give you guys a quick update on the Kennebec County budget. So our fourth meeting is this Wednesday. I, for some reason, volunteered to be the recording secretary. And that's taking up a whole lot of time, but we're doing things a lot differently than it was done last year. So everything that's been notated by the department heads who are presenting, for many of them, it's the first time they've done that. It had been just the county administrator doing it. So we're getting a lot more information from the people who actually run each of these departments. What was I gonna say? So I'm notating down all of the things that they're saying are important and why there was an increase and what it is they're asking for. And we're gonna record all of our motions because evidently that was one of the big problems they had last year when they first came out with like a 40% increase to the towns, was that things hadn't really been recorded. And so 3 or 4 different people all thought something different happened. And they just kind of picked one of them, and I guess it became very confusing. So we're not going to have that problem this year. But wow, the numbers are high. I shared them with Eric. We talked about it a couple times, and I think the numbers I saw today, it's like a 56% increase overall to the towns from the county.
So is it okay to ask the question of why they need that much 2 years in a row? I mean, like last year is also very high.
Right. Well, I think they started out in the 40s last year and they ended up in the 20-ish.
Which is high.
Which is high. There are a whole lot of reasons for it, which you understand as you go, but I think a lot of things were let go for a number of years. It could be like a decade kind of thing, and they're trying to play catch up, but you can't catch up in like 1 or 2 years. You got to have a plan and do it gradually. Like a lot of their salaries are way behind where they should be. And we kind of took care of that during COVID. When we raised the lower end, we also raised everybody else. And so the impact has been a steady increase in Readfield, whereas they really didn't do anything. And now all of a sudden they're way behind. I can tell you that the general feeling from the people who speak on the committee, which is all people from towns in the county, are what are we going to cut? Not are we going to cut? So
That sounds good. I would encourage that, given that number. That's crazy.
yeah, and I don't really understand all of that. So hopefully I will by the time we get to. All right, so we can move on. The next item, we just did that, is old business, looking at the budget.
So I was gonna suggest that maybe we take the new business and some of the other old business that relates to roads and that out of sequence, because I think we do have at least one person online that's here for the paving.
Oh, let's do the paving
Sure.
things first. Does anybody know what page this is in here?
What's the end?
34,
I'm using my phone here,
We
so
got
it's a
page
little hard to
34.
get there.
if we want to look at the,
33, 34, okay.
Yep.
So this is paving first, yes? Okay.
yes,
So the last we left it, you were going to do some investigating on comparing the proposals because we had looked at these previously.
yes, we had looked at these previously. And we did some additional work. We reached out and got answers to several questions, including where their material was coming from, who was doing their reclamation work, what equipment they'd be using for recentering the road, the central line, and the vertical and horizontal alignment, both of those things. We asked about references. We asked how they came up with their material lists and their estimates. So we really did a pretty deep dive into this. And what we found were a few things. We also tried to sort out some of the differences in volumes. And we've been able to rationalize that, I believe. So altogether, what we found was that most of the contractors that were low enough to be considered in this, all of them actually, were working with Manzer Fine Grade for the reclamation work, which was a big portion of the Lane Road repairs, and also a big question about how they were going to manage that. So Manzer was involved with that for everybody. And so that was one big question. Everybody's having their material coming from similar distances. They're all, excuse me, about 30 to 40 minutes away. Some are going to Auburn or Windsor, excuse me, and some are going to Augusta. We went through the things that stood out to me were references. We have worked with mainly paving in the past, and they were good then, and their list of references has gotten even better since we worked with them. The other low bid that we considered, there were two actually. One was Spencer Group, and the other was Allstate. Allstate we considered because they're so well known. They were close enough that we said, well, geez, maybe there's a difference in subcontractors or something there. But what we didn't really find was much difference there. They're all using the same sub for the reclamation work. And then when we looked at volume estimates, we felt that they weren't as precise as some of the other bidders. So those things kind of moved it down a little bit, and it was between effectively Spencer Group and mainly paving. And so following this review of the costs based on what we believe the actual volumes will be, not the ones that were bid, there's not a huge difference here. I mean, we're talking like, 1% again. Not a lot of difference there, but our recommendation, Matt and myself, is that we would go with mainly paving. The net difference is probably around $4,400, $4,000 to $5,000, depending on what the bottom line numbers are. More than Spencer would be, but Spencer we'd never heard of them, and they did have references, but they weren't really that close. And the type of work they've done just doesn't seem to be the same scale or volume, I guess, that what we're seeing from mainly paving. So the total on that would be, using our numbers, roughly $447,000. So what I would like to recommend is that the board authorize us to work with mainly paving with an amount not to exceed $450,000 without prior consent.
So that number is different than the one in our packet?
Yeah, so the ones in the packet are the numbers that would be there if we went with the volumes that they estimated. But again, it's not a big difference because everything kind of comes out in the wash when you get to this scale. At least that's what we saw. There were 20-foot differences on maybe the length of the road. Somebody might have gone 21 feet instead of 22, or vice versa, on the width of a road. So we really did not have major differences. But that's a good thing that gives us confidence that we will be right in that range. And again, these numbers, having two that were very, very close on the low end and having one that was just a little bit higher, it's a good indication. So I feel comfortable with this recommendation. I did look at our reserve balances, and this will be tight if we approve other work that needs to happen this year. At the end of this fiscal year, we'll have roughly $25,000 in the paving reserve. We'll of course get 300,000 coming in on July 1, but it's we're getting down to the end of that ability to buffer with that account. But I'm comfortable we can do it, and I don't see any issue or any reason not to do this at the price that was quoted and the scope of work that was presented. So
I have just one question.
sure.
Does this keep us up current on our RMS? Is it RMS?
So
Can't remember the actor at the end.
yes, we've gotten away from that a little bit. We're using more of a tabular table, what you see in the capital planning meetings that list with all the
Okay.
years and all the work. But yes, this does keep us on pace with that.
That's what I wanted to
Yeah.
know. Thank you for knowing my question.
Sure thing. Yeah.
And I don't have anything different than you would have said. I see it the same way. And as you said, even if you added up the differences in materials, it's $4,000 or $5,000. It's one way or the other, depending on who estimated it right, who estimated it wrong. So I would go along with exactly what you said.
Want to make a motion for that?
I will make a motion to accept the bid for paving. Can I generalize it like that? Or do I, for mainly paving, do we have an amount not to exceed 450,000 without approval?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Yes,
Before you
Eric?
vote, I do want to ask if Jamie's on, if he wants to speak at all. I'm not sure if he is or not. He did have an interest.
What
Jamie,
company
are you
is he
on?
from?
Mainly paving, Jamie Ward.
Yes.
There he goes.
Hi, Eric. How are you?
Hi, doing well, Jamie. So I hadn't spoken to you before this for good reason, but we've we've definitely exchanged a couple of emails through Matt Seams
Yeah.
as far as those questions. So I just wanted to see if you wanted to add anything about the program and how you think you're going to approach it.
No, I just wanted to, for one thing, thank you for going with the motion to go with us. We have done work in the past for you guys, and I hope we've done it well. And we absolutely, this is stuff that we've done for many other towns. So I'm super comfortable with Nate Manzer for one. And I'm confident that we can do a very good job for you. And by all means, as we're working, please keep us informed if there's any problems, if there's anything that we need to address as we're working, so everything is going smoothly. So I hope that answers your question, Eric. But
Yeah, well, I just wanted to give you a chance because I knew you were going to be on and
yeah,
figure I'd make it worth your while.
I certainly appreciate it.
Jamie, I'll just respond. It's Catherine, Chair of the Select Board. If you had not done good work for us in the past, we would not be considering your bid. So the fact that we're considering you, yes, you're doing a great job.
Awesome. Well, I thank you so much again. Appreciate it.
Anyone else? All those in favor? It is unanimous. Congratulations to Mainly Paving.
Great. Thank you, guys. Have a great night.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Too.
Thanks.
Eric, this did not include the gravel road work.
It did. So the old business was under 25074, and that's for the well, no, did I do
Wasn't
Day
there-
Road.
Isn't
Yeah,
there
39? Yeah, no, that was mislabeled. That said paving bid opening, but that's actually gravel roads. But so page 39 has the gravel work.
Okay.
And this is where things get a little bit interesting. But we gave the option of having the contractors provide their own materials or having the town buy the materials and having it delivered. We did get a few bids on this. I would have liked to gotten more, but I think that what we've got is something we can work with. C.H. Stevenson, local company, well-known, well-respected, came in with basically the low bid. What I'm looking at is the cost of having them provide the material, because they would be providing material that would meet our spec out of their own pit. And when I looked at the cost to deliver the material that was provided at $9 a ton, and then or 9 and change, and then we're looking at 15 to 16 to purchase the material from Pike. They're actually a better value per ton for the material. So my recommendation on this one is twofold: that we work with C.H. Stevenson, that we accept their pricing with the material being provided by them for the gravel that's going to be going down. But we're not going to be accepting the calcium chloride portion of this. That was something I put in as a wouldn't it be nice kind of thing. But looking at the relative value versus the cost and the work involved in installing that, I think it's the best option to just go with a straight rolled gravel surface. That's what we've done with our regular road work, grading for the roads, and it's worked very well. So I think that by having it compacted and compacted well with good quality material, we can forego that piece and save a little bit of money. So
What does that make their quote?
That would
Take
make
that
their
out.
quote just under $35,000. I was looking at, I just did the math. here.
24, 91.55, right?
You got that
33,
in there?
155.
Well, so it'd be the 24,000 plus the 469 tons that we had estimated for the material being put down at the 2250 per ton. So that goes to 10,522, 552.50. So you add that to the 24, and we're at around 34,352. So what I'm looking at is approval to work under those parameters, not to exceed 35,000 without permission.
So who can remember all that to make a motion?
You just simplified it.
I think Dave can do it. Dave can do it, yeah.
I'll make a motion to accept the gravel work bids for the Gay Road for C.A. Stevenson, not to exceed 35,000. Anything else I have to add to that?
No calcium.
Oh, without the calcium chloride.
Yeah.
Second.
Nice job, you guys. I have a motion and a second. Anything further to discuss? All those in favor? It is unanimous. Am I moving along quickly enough?
You are, Dave was
Close. I think we're doing
ready to
great.
vote instantly. You slowed him down by about three
Yeah.
seconds. you know?
Okay.
We have 25 minutes left and 25 minutes left on the agenda, so.
So now we're on the ditching, culvert cleaning and replacement edge grading bid opening.
Yes. So this one also was a little bit interesting. We had 3 bids. Again, I would have preferred more, but this isn't bad. We had Cushing is our local contractor that does a fair amount of work for us. He usually comes in quite competitive. This one, it was a bit of a split difference. And all in all, the prices were very close. But I would attribute some of the changes, some of the differences in cost to probably John and his company having a little bit better read on the work at hand and having a bit of a cost advantage when it comes to moving materials. So the culvert cleanouts were a lot more affordable than the other 2 vendors. And that really makes a difference. If you add up everything except for culverts, it looks like Joe Gammon and Son would be the low bid. However, when you add in 8, 10, or 12 culverts, which is right around in the range where we're thinking we need to be for the work, even if you get over 1 or 2 culverts, it starts to tilt towards John. So this is, I think, another piece that needs to be done. A lot of this work, over half of it, I'd say $50,000 to $70,000 of this is attributable to work that needs to be done before we pave. So this is for work on ditching on Beaver Dam, Morrill Road, Lane Road, North Wayne Road. So a lot of that adds up. And so well, before I get to that piece of it, my recommendation on this is that we go with John Cushing Construction on this, and that we replace culverts as needed, but no more than 12. So I would think that a cap on this of let's just say not to exceed $100,000 without prior approval would do it for me.
I think we should go 101 since it's 107.16.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Okay,
You're on
Mind
a
the
roll,
motion
Dave.
guy again?
you are.
I'll make a motion to accept the bid from Cushing Construction for the amount of, to not exceed 101,000 without prior approval,
To do what work?
to do the ditching and shoulder and sand work on all the said roads in this document.
All the said roads.
There's only about a dozen.
We just had to say it was for some specific reason, not just we're gonna give John
Just 'cause he's a nice
101,000.
guy.
Concise ways of reference just the RFP.
15
but-
rows.
I know I had a motion. Was there a second?
Second, what? Steve there.
Who wants it?
You can have a shot.
Sean wants it. Okay. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Was that quicker? It's unanimous.
wonderful.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you for that. This is more money than we originally had thought. However, it's all important work, and when you look at the stuff that's happening that is related to the paving, it's just essential. We have to do it. And this is going to draw down our road maintenance budget pretty heavily as well. And so what I'm likely going to be doing is shifting some of this, even though it's technically a maintenance expense. Because it's associated with paving work, I'm looking to have that come out of that paving account so that we can actually balance this out and not dip into our roads operating reserve, which we do have available, but that's got about 40 grand in it. And I'd like to keep that for things like if we go over on winter road maintenance in the future, or if this stuff doesn't work out and we need a buffer. There's always that possibility. So that's my recommendation on that, but we can cross that bridge if we need to.
I'd just like to congratulate you and the road committee for making sure that the culverts and the ditching and all of that is done before the road work is done. That's something that we talked about a number of years ago, that we wanted to make sure the order was that way and not backwards. So thank you for all the effort put into making sure that we could afford to do all of that in the same time.
Yeah, well, thanks. I'll just again pass that along and say Matt Seams has done an excellent job in the field, doing the measurements, working with the contractors and all that. So it's been great to have that support. All right.
Let's do the FYI, and then we'll go back to the budget because it's the last thing there. The Kennebec Regional Development Authority warrant, is that First Park?
That's First Park. Yep.
Okay, and so we're just being notified that they're having an annual meeting.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so everybody, they're having an annual meeting, and it was signed by our new town clerk.
Yes,
Kristen Wilcox.
her name has changed, so everybody make sure you call her by her proper name.
She's not new, but her name is changed.
I got a good laugh looking at the revenues on this.
Yeah.
I really hope they have a remote option. I've been hounding them about a remote option, so it'll be interesting to see if that is provided or not.
Oh, for KRDA, yeah. I've been hounding the county commissioners as well. So.
And I made a motion at the meeting last time, and it was unanimously supported that we not only have Zoom available for the public, but we also record it and post it on the county website.
Well, shoot.
But the county commissioners have to take it up at their next meeting, which will be after we finish all of our meetings.
Man, they see you can do that voluntarily.
Convenient.
Come on, that's an administrative thing. But anyway.
So,
All right. Well, anyway.
but progress, we're working on it.
Yeah.
All right, so budget highlights.
All right. So as I noted, I've been working on this for quite a while and more intensely lately. The last time we met and talked, we talked about the fact that I needed some information to really fully understand the budget. And we just voted on a big chunk of that. All those projects give us a great idea of where our spending is, what our reserve accounts look like, and what future expenses will likely look like in the next year or two. Because we hadn't done any paving since Church Road, and that was 2 years ago plus. So this is good for us. The prices are more than what we've been used to, but that's just how things are. So that was one piece of information. So we've got that pretty well buttoned down. The other piece of information that I was waiting for that I wanted to have was the fund balances from the auditor, and we got those last, I think, Wednesday, Thursday, somewhere in that time frame. And they basically did two things. They confirmed a trend that we are only bringing in around $200,000 to $220,000 into the undesignated fund on an annual basis. And that's in very large part to the work that we've done policy-wise and with budgeting to really tighten things down, to get as lean as possible, and to encourage people to not put extra in their budget because it would just roll over. So we did a lot of that, and it was very successful. And we're at the point now where the money going into the undesignated fund seems to be stabilizing, but at a much lower level than what we're used to. So the number that I saw we got from the auditors was around I think 10,000, I think is what we had going in this at 2024. End of 2024. So that was June of last year. So right now we're in process and we're trying to figure out what things are going to look like going forward. But what we know is that we are pulling out on a regular basis more money than we have going into that reserve, and that's okay for a while. And that's what the board has asked us to do. We want to draw down those balances. But once that second piece of information became clear, I had to look at the budget very carefully. And the first thing I did was reduce our use of the undesignated fund, recommend the reduction there. And the best way to look at this is graphically. And if you looked at that budget summary sheet that I put in the packet, if you go to the page where we have fund balances, what you'll see is that we are drawing down very quickly those funds. And what I'm proposing is that we try to soften that landing, so to speak.
Eric, just sorry,
Yeah.
you're talking about the committed and unassigned fund balances.
Yes, committed and unassigned fund balances.
Page 28.
Page 28, yeah, you got it. Sorry, I was rolling right through. But so we've started to tilt down that hill, and we're doing a good job. But we can't do two things at once. We can't draw more than we have going in for very long, and we also can't draw down so low that we get below our minimum threshold by any meaningful margin, or that we start maybe having to get into our other reserves to maybe make up a difference. So I think that if we're mindful of this, if we take a balanced approach, and what I'm proposing is that we curtail over the next 4 or 5 years the money that we have coming out of that undesignated fund, so that by, say, roughly 2030, we can balance somewhere around 150,000 coming in, 150,000 going out. That's really where we want to be. It wasn't very clear until this last audit came in what was actually happening. We wanted to make sure that we had a good degree of confidence, because this is a big decision. So what I'm looking at with the use of these funds we were at 375, which was actually an increase from last year. But as soon as I saw that number from the auditor, I knew we had to do something different. So I'm proposing 325, which is a $25,000 reduction from last year. And then I'm proposing that we cut it back $25,000 or $50,000, depending on the year, for the next few years until we get to that balancing point. And there's some hypotheticals out there. There's a lot of things that I don't know about what this is actually going to look like. But without making an effort at this point, we'll find ourselves in a position of not having enough funds to offset the budget without having to raise taxes dramatically. Catherine, yeah.
So am I looking right in the highlighted one for 25-26 unassigned use of funds? It says 525,000.
Yes, and I'll get to that in a split second. But,
Okay.
so what I wanted, I guess, now that you're there, I'll say that those 2 years, the row above that that has the yellow highlighting on most, but not all the columns.
Great.
That's our current fiscal year. We know what the starting balance is. We don't know what the ending balances are, and this is a projection. So the yellow is really just speculation. And so once we get through that, then the next several years are kind of a wild shot in the dark. But I think we have a lot more confidence knowing that we've tightened things down. It's much more reliable, but it's just at a lower level. So the reason I'm showing $525,000 for fund balance is because I'm also recommending at this point that we pull $200,000 out of the undesignated fund to put towards the paving reserve. Because if you remember, we're going to have $20,000 left at the end of this year. We're going to have something, depending on how we schedule the work, 300 to 400,000 coming out next year. And that math doesn't work unless we've got some buffer in there. We can either bond it or we could take it out of the undesignated fund. I think that we have the capacity to pull that amount out. We might need to do something different in 2 or 3 years, depending on how things go. But for right now, that'll allow us to keep on our paving schedule without borrowing, which would be a good thing, I think. We could break that up and just pull out 100,000 and drop it into the account, but that's kind of semantics at this point. I just wanted to note that I'm recommending that we consider that. And I need to talk to the budget committee more on this, and we need to meet, we're meeting on the 19th. This will be a big part of our discussion. But what's showing there is just the reduction so that we know how close we are to that threshold that we have, that 2/12 or 3/12, or whichever it is. But that doesn't show up in our budget. In our budget, what we're seeing is just the 325, because the rest of that's a tax transfer. It's going from an undesignated fund to an assigned fund. So that doesn't have a tax impact, so it doesn't affect the budget.
We still have the same money. It's just in a different place.
Just in a different place with a different purpose.
And where does that leave us at the end of the year with the 2/12, 3/12 thing?
It leaves us right now at about 105%. But
So a
what,
little
Oh,
more than
yeah.
2/12.
a little bit more than 2/12, yeah.
Yeah.
But what that means is that over the next couple of years, we're probably gonna dip below that 100% threshold, right? We're gonna kind of go below that, but I think that we kind of have to without having a bigger tax impact than what I'd like to see. So I'm comfortable because we do have healthy assigned reserves. We're not gonna have a cash flow issue, right? We're okay there. But if we got down to 50%, we might have to start worrying a little bit. But I think that we're gonna be able to manage this. And I will be working with the budget committee to kind of fine tune this discussion and this assessment. But I wanted to put it out here just to say that's where I think we are. And when you take $50,000 in revenue out of a budget that's already tight, there's tax impacts for that. So
So does that remove that chunk? Does that help remove the need to bond this year then for the infrastructure?
Yes.
yes, to a large degree, not entirely.
So we'd
And
save like $42,000 in principal right there, right? Wouldn't we?
well, we would save a $10,000 in interest this year and potentially 50 next year. However, that 10,000 this year and 50 next year is tied to the salt sand shed. Well, so this is like, it's kind of circular, right? But
Which we don't have enough money for.
which we don't have
No
enough money
matter what,
for
at the current bids.
under the current bid. So at this point, I'm really just ready to just say, you know, we're not gonna worry about this until we figure out how to get our overall fund balances stable, and maybe in 5 years, we look at it. That building is not gonna collapse or fail in 5 years, but our biggest time issue right now is the municipal association and whether or not they'll pull coverage on it. You know, right now, they haven't pulled general liability, and I don't believe they will, but that's gonna be a question I'm gonna have to ask them, because that 1 million number is it's just crazy. If we're able to put it out to bid and get it done for 500,000, then I think we probably ought to do that.
I just can't imagine us spending $1 million for another building.
I can't either.
This
I can't
stores
either.
salt.
Yeah.
I just.
That's crazy.
Yep, it is.
I'm stuck. I can't.
So,
even
but
imagine
that's a whole
asking.
nother discussion, but I guess I wanted to just put a flag there and say, there still is that bonding in the warrant this year, or in the budget, but it's that $10,000 is pretty small at this point. But it's all relative. So what I'll say also is that we're at a point where with municipal revenues and expenditures, every $10,000 is a 1% change in how much the municipal mill rate is going up or down. So a 1% increase in taxes or a 1% decrease over last year is $10,000. But what I'll say also on that is, after I realized how tight things were, I went through every single line of the budget and cut where I could. I had to add a little bit here and there. We had to add money for the technology piece, $6,000 there, but we were able to cut a lot in other areas and be incredibly, I think, lean. But the net result right now, with all of this being said, is that we're looking at about a 9% increase proposed on the municipal side. We're not that big. So it's probably only a $60, $70 impact for the average homeowner, but it's big enough and it's something I want to think about. But the other thing I want to point out about that is that we had $30,000 increase in ambulance services from Winthrop and dispatch. So there's 3% right there. We lost $30,000 in revenue sharing from the state last year. There's another 3%. And we cut the $50,000 out of our ability to pull money out of the undesignated fund to offset taxes. So this isn't a spending driven thing that we have control over. I just wanted to make that point clear. What we're having this, in my view, is we've been very good at being lean, and now we have a revenue issue. And unfortunately, I'm not sure that's going to change. State revenues they're very tough. They tend to take it out on the municipalities. And I'm just talking about town funding, not county or school, which are the threat to the Department of Education funding right now is scary. But just on the town side, it's explainable, it's uncomfortable, but I think that in order to avoid a larger increase later down the road, to keep increases less than 10% over the next several years, keep them in the single digits, I think this is the right tack. Again, I don't like it necessarily, but I don't think we have a choice really, unless we start talking about deferring paving or cutting staff positions, and that's a big change, and I'm not quite there yet. So I talked for quite a bit. I just wanted to give you a big picture, and I'm happy to take questions or talk more about any of this at this point.
Well, one thing I'd say is I really appreciate you looking at the budget so finally, and also laying like your perspective out all the way through 2029. And just like, I really think we're super lucky to have someone who plans so far ahead and so carefully. I mean, it's not easy, I know, but I really feel like this is how we're able to like not have these big peaks and valleys all the time, and I give you props for that.
Well, I appreciate that.
That's,
yeah.
Well, it's
I
impressive.
will
Listen to the
say
way
I
you
wish
did it.
I'd come to this realization like a year or two ago, but
I wish you had too, but
it's
that's
it's
another
hard to
story.
see. It's hard to see when you don't have a crystal ball and when you don't have audit information. Even if it's timely, it was hard because we had made that change in our accounting system, and that cut the fat and the extra. I mean, we were dealing with COVID where we couldn't spend money, didn't spend money. We had a lot of money going into the undesignated fund, and we were pulling a lot out. And that was not inappropriate, but I just wish we'd adjusted that rate a little bit. But the one point I want to make on rates, speaking now about the school and the county, is that with Catherine's involvement with the budget for the county, I spent a lot more time looking at that, and our own. I mean, and she's been a great advocate for keeping things low for us. I looked back at all those at the increases that we've seen. Because we have tried really hard at the town level to keep things reasonable. And over the past 8 years, looking back to the time before COVID when we had stable budgets in most areas, the town has increased about 22% in 8 years. And that's considering what happened during COVID. That's pretty responsible. That might be around the rate of inflation. It might be less, but it's certainly not more. But what we saw commensurate with that increase was the county budget going up almost double, 95% increase on the county budget. They're less as a percentage wise than we are. They're 8% now. We're 16 to 18, but they doubled. And the school went up about 32%, 31, 32%. But the school, unfortunately, is, as you know, a lion's share. So they increased by $350,000 last year. We're on track for $200,000 this year. And their increase was more. So of the three components of the tax bill, we've been the most constrained. And I don't know if we've been too constrained or not, but it's looking like we're going to have to ease up a little bit and try to catch up just a little. But I still think that all in all, by the time everything shakes out, we will have done a very good job of keeping things as low as possible for as long as possible, And now that we're in this phase, we're gonna have to ramp up a little bit, but I think we're gonna have to do like what we always do and do it responsibly. So that's the budget.
One thing you and I talked about earlier today on the phone was this impact to the public. So about 5 years ago, I think our average home value was at 200 or 220. And we've had to keep increasing that because of the state minimum requirements so that we get our full revenue sharing that they keep making smaller, but anyway. So now that average is up to 330,000, which means a lot of these people who are our residents have not had salary increases, but their property has become much more worth a lot more. This is kind of like what happened in Freeport a number of years ago. All these property values went up, nobody's income went up, and now all of a sudden their taxes were completely out of line with what people could afford, who were just the people who've lived in town forever. And I think we're trying to be very responsible to people along that line. So if you're looking at a $67 increase on a house, that's the average price in Readfield, that comes out to $6 a month. And I don't think that's a whole lot. Now, that's not what their tax bill is going to go up. Their tax bill, based on what Eric said for the county and the school, you're probably looking at $20 a month, which is getting higher. And so we have to look at how do we want to handle municipal services? Do we want to let the school and the county eat up all of the increase and then let our services go and have people, you know, looking at our roads and going, well, we used to have nice roads and now they're falling apart. And, you know, we used to have this service and we used to have that service. So I think my looking at this for $6 a month on average, it's probably affordable to continue doing what Eric is proposing. Of course, we'd like it to not go up, but that's not realistic. We know that there's always going to be inflation. And if the cost of living increase, I think it was 3.4% this year, Eric, is that right?
Right in there, yeah, 3.5, yeah, something like that.
How do we do something, and how do you plan ahead? Like Steve was saying, you've done a great job forecasting, but you can't anticipate that our ambulance dispatch and service is going to go up by 30,000, 30 or 50 this year.
30 this year, and it's gonna be 30
30,000
next
this year and 30,000 next year. There's no way we could have anticipated that.
Combined with the loss of revenue sharing.
Right, that's a doubling in 2 years, right?
Yeah, it's substantial, and we're doing what we can to work on that cost piece. You know, and on the 24th, we're going to hear from the Winthrop Town Manager and the Ambulance Service Director to talk to you folks directly about what that means and why and what. And it's a reasonable explanation. I just think we can do better, either with them or in some cases, depending with possibly somebody else, but mostly for the dispatch side of it. The ambulance service is hard. It's a hard nut to crack, but operations, I'll just jump in a little bit and say one more thing about operations. I did make a kind of a sizable operational change here. When Chris let me know he was going to retire, that'll be the third person in that position in 5 years. And the cemetery sexton piece of that used to be separate, and I'm recommending with this budget that it be separate again. It's hard to find someone who wants to mow lawns, hammer a nail, you know, do janitorial work, and then also deal with people who are grieving for cemetery related administrative work. And so I did talk to our union representatives, and we kind of worked things out, and I'd like to pull that position out. It's not final. I want to get, you know, board buy-in on it, but basically what we did is we dropped $1 an hour out of that general services position, which had been increased because of the technical side of it, the need to be more of a professional in that role. So that money was then put into a stipend for a cemetery sexton, and I bumped it up to $2,500 just to make it more viable in line with the other type of stipends that we're having. So what we did was basically raise the budget by $500 in net, but now we have a separate position, and that will make, I think, both of those jobs easier. So I just wanted to let you know that and get some feedback if you had any.
Can anybody apply for that? Like, could another employee apply to be the sexton?
Yes,
Okay.
the caveat would be that it would have to be done outside of their regular working hours, evenings and weekends. But honestly, a lot of times that's when people who are dealing with these things are dealing with them. The burials are oftentimes on the weekends, people work and they have to make calls in the evening. So it's not that out of line to expect that, but it could be a resident who isn't affiliated with the town at all. What I'm looking for is someone who's willing to do it for 10 years and give that stability, because I don't believe we've been meeting the need for the community the way we should by having constant turnover, having to train somebody every couple of years. It takes them a couple of years just to get it figured out. So anyway, that's the big operational change that came with this last draft of the budget.
I wanted to mention that because I think that was the reason we pulled the sexting position into a maintenance job, because it had been separate and it was an uncomfortable situation with the employee who had two jobs happening at the same time for two different kinds of pay. So
That's correct.
so
Yep.
now we're going to go back to that possibly.
Possibly. I mean, all you have to do is vote for it in the budget and it's good, but
Okay.
I think it's mostly an administrative piece, but I really wanted to vet it, so.
Anything else?
Make a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor? And we are done at 7:05. Thank you,
All right,
everyone.
sign up for government work.
And we're meeting again on the 24th, yes?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And it'll be a little bit more robust meeting. This one was a quickie, so.
This was robust. We were just.